Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Washington. Thank you for joining this live stream that highlights the new Open Doors numbers. And thank you very much for the role that all of those tuning in contributed to the rebounding of international educational mobility, which we will highlight. In a minute, it will be my privilege to introduce a friend and champion, Lee Satterfield, who is Assistant Secretary of State for Education and Cultural Affairs, and whose support makes our Open Doors annual data release possible. We're both delighted to share the positive news this year regarding international students studying in the United States and U.S. students studying abroad. We're moving beyond the 12th pandemic in IIE's history, and as we do so, we note that with all the previous ones, international education and exchanges proved resilient, thanks to you, rebounded quickly and are now growing dramatically. We're also all experiencing a new normal that's defined by its hybrid nature and technologies that were not previously available. This is all changing how we prepare students and scholars for international education and what contingencies we take into account throughout their journey and stay abroad. As you will hear, where students go and where scholars go has remained constant and dependent on the capacity of destination countries to host them in their higher education institutions. IIE began collecting this data in 1920, when we also discovered that the United States surpassed Germany and England, which for 500 years had been the leading destination countries. Now, hosting international students is a key way our university communities and people learn about and engage with the world we share, and how we also invent vaccines and much else that benefit the whole world. One of the main reasons America can welcome students and scholars from everywhere is the 76 years that the Fulbright program has been the flagship program of our public diplomacy. So over to Assistant Secretary Satterfield.
Hello, everyone. On behalf of President Biden and Secretary Blinken, and in partnership with the U.S. Department of Education, welcome to International Education Week 2023. The United States recognizes international education as a critical component of our efforts to achieve broader foreign policy goals, ranging from an equitable economy to a more inclusive society. Whether it's international students, scholars, teachers, artists, and professionals who travel to the United States to study with us, or American students and scholars who study abroad, international education is at the heart of shaping our shared future. To start, I'd like to extend a special thank you to Dr. Alan Goodman and our partners at the Institute of International Education for this year's Open Doors Report, the annual census that outlines international education trends. This year, we're thrilled to say that we have more than 1 million international students studying in the United States. More students are choosing international education as the pathway to shape their future. And I'm proud to share that the United States remains the top destination for international students. It is amazing to see the educational, economic, and cultural impact these students have on American campuses and communities. Thank you for choosing to study with us. In addition to Open Doors, we're celebrating and elevating how the future is shaped by international education. From partnering with other countries on the Fulbright program, to highlighting the Gilman Scholarship, which provides American students financial support to intern and study abroad, to using creative platforms like music to enhance English language learning. We also see Americans studying abroad after the pandemic, with more than 188,000 participating in programs in 2021-2022. And I want to say loud and clear, study abroad is accessible to everyone at all levels, from community colleges to universities offering four-year degrees and graduate study. So on the occasion of International Education Week, I would like to encourage international students to come to the United States and study with us. And as a mom whose son recently returned from a semester studying abroad, I encourage American students to include study abroad as part of their higher education experience. Pursue your future through international education. Happy International Education Week. I would like to share videos from Secretary of State Blinken and Secretary of Education Cardona celebrating International Education Week.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us to kick off International Education Week. There's something transformative about studying abroad. You learn to see the world through someone else's eyes. You're introduced to new ideas, new languages, new foods, even new sports teams. And you forge friendships and connections that last a lifetime. That was my experience spending my teenage years overseas. And it's what millions of students and scholars discover as well, whether they're Americans going abroad or international students coming to the United States. Of course, international education doesn't just benefit individuals. It's also vital to American diplomacy, to our economic competitiveness, even to our national security. Last year, international students contributed almost $38 billion to the U.S. economy and supported more than 335,000 American jobs, not to mention those who stay to work and strengthen our communities. Researchers collaborating across borders are addressing global challenges, from combating pandemics to tackling climate change. Educational exchanges bring new perspectives to our classrooms and our campuses and expose people around the world to the United States and our values. Wherever I go, I meet foreign officials, business leaders, civil society members who understand our country better after studying here. That's why we're working to ensure that the United States remains the top destination for international students and researchers, while also increasing and diversifying the ranks of Americans who are studying abroad. And I want to thank our higher education partners at four-year universities, community colleges, minority-serving institutions for everything you do to open doors for people-to-people exchanges. This year, for the first time since the COVID pandemic, the United States welcomed over 1 million international students. That's a 12% increase since last year. They come from most every nation, from Ghana to Colombia to Nepal. If you're a student thinking about studying in America, I hope you'll join them. And if you're an American, consider taking advantage of opportunities like the State Department's Gilman or Fulbright programs. The impact will be lasting, for you and for the world.
Hello, I'm U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona. Happy International Education Week. The United States is growing more diverse and our global economy more interconnected. That's why we need to raise the bar and give all of our students the opportunities to gain the multilingual skills and cultural competencies that'll help them compete and shape bright futures. Each November, the United States Departments of Education and State come together to celebrate International Education Week. It's a time to promote the benefits of international education and highlight U.S. government programs that expand access to global experiences. Global engagement helps us strengthen education right here in the United States and champion student success. For that reason, the Department of Education's Raise the Bar initiative prioritizes creating pathways for global engagement, so every student can access strong on-ramps to college and careers and opportunities to become multilingual. In today's world, many of our society's challenges have a global reach, and more people are working in cross-cultural or transnational jobs. Mastering more than one language is a superpower that helps people excel, collaborate with clients and co-workers from other countries, and compete for the most in-demand jobs. It's also how we represent the beautiful diversity that is one of our country's greatest strengths. The United States will always be shaped by the identities and backgrounds of our people. By experiencing different cultural and linguistic traditions at home, students can apply that knowledge in international settings. Welcoming foreign students, teachers, and professionals to the U.S. on exchanges also brings different perspectives to American classrooms, deepening the discussions students have on international issues. These experiences do so much to enrich learning. This week, we're releasing our updated international strategy, Succeeding Globally Through International Education and Engagement. We're reaffirming our commitment to preparing all students in our country to thrive, not only today, but tomorrow. From strengthening our education cooperation with other countries to sharing best practices in education to supporting Title VI and Fulbright Hays Awards, the Department of Education will continue efforts that help students engage on a global scale. So happy International Education Week. Join the celebration now and throughout the year.
Hello, and welcome to the Open Doors 2023 annual data release. Today, you will hear the latest data from the Open Doors report on international educational exchange from our Research, Evaluation, and Learning team at the Institute of International Education. With my colleagues, Julie Baer and Leah Mason, we will be presenting data on international students at U.S. higher education institutions, U.S. students studying abroad, and trends in global student mobility. Let us start with data on international students at U.S. colleges and universities. Each year, the International Student Census is sent to nearly 3,000 accredited U.S. colleges and universities that reported hosting international students in the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System, or SEVIS. Colleges and universities report to Open Doors and represent every state and U.S. territory, and some have been reporting to the project for nearly 75 years. This year, the Open Doors data represents 67% of all institutions surveyed. Next, who is counted in the census? Open Doors 2023 includes international students attending U.S. college and university classes in person or online. It includes students pursuing post-study work opportunities on optional practical training or OPT. And finally, what is the time frame represented in Open Doors 2023? We collected data from U.S. colleges and universities to reflect the 2022-23 academic year. The vast majority of U.S. higher education institutions began fall 2022 with in-person classes. An increasing number of international students from abroad could travel, and the vast majority of international students were studying in person on U.S. campuses. Within this context, we present the data for the 2022-23 academic year. 1,057,188 international students studied at U.S. colleges and universities and were on OPT in the 2022-23 academic year. The U.S. continues to be the top destination for international students, and the 12% increase this year is the fastest international student growth rate in more than 40 years. When we look at the last 2 decades of data, we note robust growth until the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020-21, when travel restrictions reduced the total number of students able to pursue overseas study. In just 2 years, the total number of students is approaching pre-pandemic levels. And looking at the last 5 years in particular, the height of international student totals in the United States was in 2018-19 at 1,095,299 students. The COVID-19 pandemic resulted in a 15% decrease year-on-year in 2022-21. And just 2 years since, the rate of international student growth has increased by 4% last year and 12% this year. The year-on-year change in international students this year, an increase of 108,000 students, is the largest in Open Doors history. It is important to note that all academic levels and OPT increased in 2022-23. A total of 467,027 international graduate students studied at U.S. higher education institutions, followed by 347,602 undergraduate students and 43,766 non-degree students. In addition, 198,793 students pursued OPT. Let us look at these academic levels further, noting changes over the last 3 years. The number of undergraduate students has increased for the first time in 5 years, with a 1% increase in 2022-23. The effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, resulting in smaller cohorts several years ago, has slowed overall growth at the undergraduate level. Since then, however, there has been growth this year among entering cohorts, including at the associates, freshman, and sophomore student levels. The total number of graduate students increased by 21%, the highest level of graduate students ever recorded in Open Doors. The growth at the graduate level was driven by increasing numbers of master's students, which grew by a robust 37%. Graduates continue to surpass undergraduate numbers in 2022-23. The non-degree international student population experienced a 28% increase due to the continued resumption of many exchange programs and the rebound of intensive English programs. And finally, the total number of students on OPT grew by 8% to 198,793 students. This turnaround was likely driven by the strong rebound of graduate students last year and ended 2 years of declines among students pursuing OPT amid the COVID-19 pandemic. As the incoming classes of new international students grow, we are likely to see OPT numbers increase in the future. The number of new international students enrolling at a college or university for the first time surpassed 298,000, exceeding pre-pandemic levels in 2019-20 and nearly reaching an all-time high. Mapping the trajectory of new enrollments, similar to overall student trends, there was a sharp decrease in 2020-21 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, followed by an 80% increase last year. This year's 14% increase builds on the growth. The United States continued to be the destination of choice for international students from over 210 places of origin. China, India, and South Korea were the top 3 places of origin in 2022-23. And when we expand to the top 25 places of origin, we see that we have students coming to the United States from all world regions. More U.S. higher education institutions are expanding their outreach, especially by leveraging the Education USA network. And this growth demonstrates how attractive education at U.S. institutions is for students from around the world. Let's look now closer at our top 2 places of origin, China and India. These 2 countries together made up 53% of all international students in the United States. China remained the leading place of origin and remained stable at 289,526 students. There was a minimal change of 560 fewer students than last year. The total number of students from China has decreased in the last 3 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This year, however, we do see modest increases in the number of graduate and non-degree students, as well as students pursuing OPT. International students from India increased by 35%, reaching an all-time high of 268,923 students. India surpassed China to become the largest host of international graduate students in the United States. The number of Indian graduate students increased by 63%, and there was a 16% uptick in the number of undergraduates. When we look at the overall makeup of Chinese students and Indian students, we do note some differences. Chinese students have traditionally come to study at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. Comparatively, we find that Indian students have traditionally preferred to study for graduate degrees and are the primary place of origin of students on OPT. And coming back to the overall composition of Chinese and Indian students as a proportion of the total, one final note is the market share of each country over time. Just 5 years ago, China and India made up 52% of all international students, with 33% from China and 18% from India. In 2022-23, Chinese and Indian students made up 53% of all international students, with 27% of students from China and 25% of students from India. Most leading places of origin experienced rebounds, with 23 of the top 25 places of origin increasing and 14 returning to pre-pandemic enrollment levels. Furthermore, 8 of the top 25 reached all-time highs: Bangladesh, Colombia, Ghana, India, Italy, Nepal, Pakistan, and Spain. Notably, Ghana entered the top 25 places of origin for the first time in Open Doors history, and it is also the first time in over a decade that 2 sub-Saharan African places of origin, Nigeria and Ghana, are in the top 25. International students are welcome to study at U.S. colleges and universities across the country, and 48 states this year experienced increases in their international student totals. California, New York, and Texas were the top 3 destinations for international students. As we include more states, we see that international students are hosted in every region across the country. International students make up 6% of all U.S. students in higher education, which is close to 19 million. There continues to be substantial capacity for campuses to host more international students. We do continue to see differences in international students at U.S. universities by their type. I first want to show you the composition of U.S. universities. Doctoral universities make up the largest proportion of international student enrollments, followed by master's colleges and universities and baccalaureate colleges. When we look at the changes at these institutions in the 2022-23 year, we see that while doctoral universities increased by 11%, master's colleges and universities increased by 22%. As we see the totals of graduate students continue to increase, we have noted the hundreds of institutions with graduate programs available for international students looking to pursue study in the United States. Finally, we have also seen growth in other types of institutions, including baccalaureate colleges, associates colleges or community colleges, and special focus institutions. Let us move now to the fields of study that international students pursue. In 2022-23, over half of all international students studied in the STEM fields. All major fields of study noted increases. Math and computer science continued to grow as the leading field of study for international students in 2022-23, increasing by 20%. The totals for international students pursuing engineering grew by 8% as well. And as shown in this slide, other fields of study have increased as well. This is great news, as it indicates that students choosing to pursue study in the United States benefit from the many types of degrees and specialties at our U.S. institutions. To that end, we also know that students from different places of origin vary in the majors they pursue. While there continues to be strong interest in STEM fields from many of our leading places of origin, we also see greater diversity among the other top 25, including places where greater proportions of students pursue business and management, social sciences, or fine and applied arts. International students pursue a wide variety of fields of study due to the many academic options that U.S. higher education institutions offer. Finally, international students are a major contributors to the U.S. economy. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, in 2022, international students contributed $38 billion, primarily through funding of their education. Over half of all international students contributed non-U.S. funding, and particularly personal funds, to fund their education. This number is particularly high for undergraduate students, who often finance their own education. Before I conclude, I want to touch on some of the findings from the Fall 2023 International Student Enrollment Snapshot. The snapshot is a joint endeavor between IIE and 10 other international education organizations and presents international student enrollment patterns for the current 2023-24 academic year. This year, we received data from over 630 U.S. higher education institutions, a subset of the institutions we survey as part of Open Doors. The profile of these institutions closely resembles that of institutions represented in Open Doors. I want to highlight 4 key findings from the Fall 2023 snapshot. Our first finding is that in Fall 2023, the number of international students continues to increase by 8%. This signals a continued growth of international students at U.S. colleges and universities and builds on the 2 years of growth already noted in Open Doors. Second, the number of international students has grown across all academic levels and OPT. We continue to see growth in undergraduate numbers at 3% and graduate numbers at 7%. Finally, we are pleased to see that the number of students on OPT has increased by 17%. A third finding is that new international students beginning their studies continue to increase at 2%, building on the strong rebound of 80% and 14% over the last 2 years as reported in Open Doors. 57% of reporting institutions are noting slight or substantial increases in new enrollments this fall. Finally, international student outreach and recruitment continue to be a priority for U.S. institutions. 85% of reporting institutions indicate that financial support for international student recruitment is the same or higher than in previous years. Institutions continue to prioritize outreach and recruitment in key places of origin, including India, China, Nigeria, and Vietnam, both for prospective undergraduate and graduate students. I am now pleased to introduce Julie Baer, who will be sharing data on U.S. students studying abroad.
Thank you, Mirka. I'm pleased to present some of the Open Doors 2023 key findings on U.S. students studying abroad. I first want to briefly go over the information we collected on U.S. study abroad in Open Doors 2023. We surveyed accredited colleges and universities across the United States with study abroad programs. Our data collection focuses on U.S. students enrolled at U.S. higher education institutions who then go abroad for academic credit. We counted students who studied abroad during the 2021-22 academic year, from fall 2021 through summer 2022. This is 1 year prior to the year Mirka just referenced for international students. The reason for this time lag is that we need to allow time for students to go abroad, come back home, and then be awarded credit at their U.S. institution. I want to pause here and take a step back to remember where we were during this period of time in 2021 through 2022. During this time, institutions were beginning to resume study abroad programs, but still taking precautions amid the COVID-19 pandemic to safeguard the health and well-being of students, faculty, and staff, and certain destinations still had strict travel restrictions in effect. In the 2021-22 academic year, 188,753 U.S. students studied abroad for academic credit. This rebound highlights the return of study abroad programming following the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, when we look at the historical trend of U.S. study abroad, it is important to understand the context prior to the pandemic, as we look to the future of study abroad. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, the number of American students studying abroad had been steadily increasing, with over 347,000 students studying abroad in 2018-19. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many U.S. higher education institutions suspended programs, resulting in a 96% decline in U.S. study abroad between 2018-19 and 2021. The more than 188,000 U.S. students studying abroad as of the 2021-22 year represents a nearly 13-fold increase from the low of approximately 15,000 study abroad students in the prior year. This rebound showcases how study abroad is more than halfway back to pre-pandemic levels. When looking at where American students studied, Europe was the predominant destination for study abroad, with nearly 3/4, or 73%, of students studying in this region, which is the highest proportion of students studying in Europe in more than 30 years. When we look at the data by regional destinations over the past several years, what we see reflected is not an overarching trend in study abroad, but a snapshot of a point in time that highlights how different regions of the world were responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. Before the pandemic, in 2018-19, approximately 56% of students studied in Europe, with 14% in Latin America and the Caribbean, 12% of students in Asia, and 4% in Sub-Saharan Africa and Oceania. What we note as of 2021-22 is that study abroad rebounded faster in Europe than it did in places like Asia and Oceania, which was likely due to continued travel restrictions in 2021-22 in those regions. We look forward to continuing to closely monitor this data in the years to come as COVID-19 restrictions eased and study abroad programs came back online after being paused due to health and safety precautions. Reflecting this regional trend, Italy, the United Kingdom, Spain, and France remained the leading host destinations, with more than half, 52%, of all students studying in these top 4 destinations. Many of the leading destinations during this time period continued to reflect places that allowed travel amid the pandemic and destinations with historical institutional relationships or institutional branch campuses that could continue to welcome students. While the majority of Americans traveled to destinations in Europe, we found that students continued to study in diverse destinations globally, with students traveling to more than 170 destinations around the world. Another metric we have tracked over time is the duration that students study abroad. What we saw this year was that there was a rebound in all durations of study abroad in 2021-22, with the overall profile mirroring study abroad trends prior to the pandemic in 2018-19. The majority, 65% of students, studied abroad for short-term durations, which include experiences that are 8 weeks or less during the academic year or are over the summer. 1/3 went abroad on mid-length durations, and 3% on long-term durations. What we did note in the data was that there was a difference in when study abroad programs began to return following the height of the pandemic. We saw that a higher proportion, nearly half of all students who went abroad, were pursuing opportunities to study abroad as of summer 2022, which may have been when more programs were resuming operations. I now want to look at the characteristics of U.S. students studying abroad, which is important to understand as U.S. colleges and universities look to diversify opportunities for students in the future. Business and management and the social sciences have long been the most popular majors for students pursuing study abroad, and remain so in the 2021-22 year. Among the STEM fields, the largest proportions went abroad from the physical and life sciences, engineering, and health fields. We note that students go abroad from a wide array of majors, and institutions are continuing to encourage students to participate in global opportunities, as research has shown that study abroad is an enriching, high-impact practice that leads to improved educational and workforce outcomes for students of all majors and backgrounds. the proportion of underrepresented students from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds studying abroad has grown over the past 20 years. And in the 2021-22 academic year, approximately 32% of students identified as students of color. However, it is important to put these proportions into the broader context of U.S. higher education. As institutions look to the future of study abroad, continued focus in this area is necessary to align with the national U.S. student enrollment trend. When we compare this to the overall U.S. higher education population, 47% of all U.S. students identified as students of color. So we still have work to do to make study abroad opportunities available and accessible to students from all backgrounds. Institutions seeking to support students who could not participate in a study abroad program outside of the United States in 2021-22 offered students a variety of online global learning experiences. As a result, in addition to the more than 188,000 U.S. students who studied abroad for academic credit, more than 16,000 students received academic credit for participating in online global learning experiences. U.S. colleges and universities provided a wide array of online opportunities for students to gain global educational experiences. The most popular online experiences included internships and consulting with global companies, courses paired across institutions that work together, collaborative project-based learning, and video conference dialogues. Furthermore, over half of all institutions indicated that they offered multiple types of online global learning. These virtual educational experiences provide a critical way for students to continue gaining valuable global insights and perspectives for those who are not able to travel abroad. Another way that study abroad has diversified is through the types of activities that students pursue. In addition to for-credit study abroad, which all of my previous slides focused on, institutions may offer non-credit study abroad opportunities, providing a wealth of unique experiences for students. In the 2021-22 academic year, more than 250 institutions reported that more than 12,000 U.S. students traveled abroad to participate in an experiential activity and did not receive credit at their home campuses for their time abroad. We found that the most popular activity among non-credit study abroad was participating in research or fieldwork opportunities. Other non-credit activities included volunteering, worker internships, conferences, or performing arts trips abroad. As I just noted, there are many types of study abroad, and it is important to bring each of these data points together to help us build a comprehensive picture of study abroad in the 2021-22 academic year. Through our work on Open Doors, we just reported data on the number of students going abroad on for-credit activities, non-credit activities, and online global learning opportunities. In addition, from our work on Project Atlas, we also know that there are over 80,000 American students going directly to other countries to pursue a full degree. Combined, nearly 300,000 students engaged in global educational experiences in the 2021-22 academic year. Finally, as study abroad resumes, I do want to highlight that data from IIE's snapshot surveys indicate a continued rebound in study abroad as we look to future academic years. Over the past 2 years, IIE has collected data from hundreds of U.S. higher education institutions regarding the state of study abroad. Across these responses, we see that the majority of colleges and universities anticipate continued study abroad growth beyond the 2021-22 academic year. Building upon the growth I just reported, over 80% of institutions anticipated growth in both the 2022-23 and the forthcoming 2023-24 academic year. As we have noted, the international education field has been resilient, and educational exchange often rebounds following crises. We are pleased to report the strong rebound of study abroad programs beginning in the 2021-22 academic year, and all indications point to a continued reemergence of study abroad for the future. We look forward to continuing our work with the field to tell this story in the years to come. I will now turn this over to my colleague Leah Mason to speak more about global student mobility.
Thank you, Julie. Now that we have an understanding of mobility to and from the United States, I would like to look at the broader picture of global student mobility. Project Atlas was created in 2001 to contextualize the Open Doors data and see how it fits in the global picture of other host countries, attracting large numbers of international students. Today, Project Atlas has 30 partner organizations that are part of the national data collection in their country and that share with us the information they have on international students coming to their country, using the same definition that Open Doors uses. I want to acknowledge that the country data shared by our partners and described in this section of the presentation represents slightly different periods due to variations in national data collection schedules. I want to thank all the Project Atlas partners who shared information about international students and the higher education context in their countries this year. As the world moves forward from the initial shock of the COVID-19 pandemic, the resurgence of mobility continues to reflect regional differences and therefore a mixed or uneven picture. In this trend line, you can see that while international student mobility had grown significantly in the 20 years preceding the pandemic, the UNESCO Institute for Statistics reported that the total number of globally mobile international students remained consistent at 6.4 million in the 2020-21 academic year. For a closer look at the country and regional differences, I will now return to the Project Atlas data. Global student mobility patterns remain in flux. As such, we see variations in traditional trends among leading host destinations for international students. While Project Atlas partners in North America and Europe reported robust increases in international student numbers, partners in Asia and Oceania reported decreases in international student numbers, with the steepest decreases in Japan at 10%, followed by smaller decreases in China and Australia. These regional differences are further reflected in the proportion of international students hosted by the leading destinations of international students. The top 5 hosts of international students, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, France, and Australia, remained the same and hosted 50% of international students in Project Atlas reporting year 2023. The United States remains the #1 host of international students, hosting 17% of the total number of international students. The United Kingdom and Canada hosted 11% and 10% respectively, and France, Australia, and Germany each hosted 6% of all international students. We heard in the Open Doors presentation that China was the leading sending country of international students to the United States. This holds true among the majority of Project Atlas partners. However, Project Atlas partners also reported that the overall number of students from China fell in 2023. Here, you can see that the top 5 host destinations of international students from China include the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, Japan, and Canada, each reporting flat or falling numbers of students from China, with the exception of the United Kingdom, which reported growth of 5%. We also heard in the Open Doors presentation that India was the second leading sending country of international students to the United States, with increases of 35% in the total number of students from India. Interestingly, when we turn to the global view, we see that Indian students are heavily concentrated in the top 3 host destinations of international students, driving the growth in these 3 countries, while rising in much smaller numbers in other host destinations. The top 5 host destinations of international students from India include Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Germany, each reporting significant increases in the number of students from India, with the exception of Australia, which reported a decrease of 1%. When viewed together, this data offers insights into the growth among the leading host countries. As countries globally look to attract international students, it is also important to acknowledge the continued capacity for institutions to host international students. Looking at the leading Anglophone countries, we see that international students represented just under 25% of the total higher education populations in the United Kingdom and Australia, and have now reached 30% of the higher education population in Canada, creating a need for greater support for international students in locations which have fewer higher education institutions than the United States. With more than 3,800 degree-granting higher education colleges and universities, the United States has the most capacity to host international students at an institution that fits their academic aspirations. In the 2022-23 academic year, international students represented only 6% of U.S. higher education institutions' total enrollment. Therefore, the United States has a greater capacity to host additional international students, while other leading hosts may be limited by the size of their higher education sector. The capacity issue is further complicated by the number of international students focused on similar fields of study, namely STEM fields, which at the institutional level affects the institutional capacity to satisfy the growing demand of international students in these specific areas. While the Open Doors presentation was clear that there is a high demand for STEM fields by international students coming to the United States, the global trend reveals strong interest in STEM as well as other fields of study. In 2023, 16 Project Atlas partners reported that 44% of the total international students hosted by these countries pursued studies in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields, with another 21% pursuing studies in business and management. A closer look at international students in the STEM fields shows that interest in engineering and mathematics and computer science are relatively even. These proportions have remained stable over the past 3 years alongside enrollment in other fields, such as the social sciences, fine and applied arts, and education fields. Before concluding our presentation today, we want to share several resources. We invite you to the Open Doors website to explore, download, and share the Open Doors data. Today, all of the 2023 data has been updated and is available. In addition to our data tables and infographics, the site has state, country, and regional fact sheets. We also want to thank the organizations that made today possible. First and foremost, we want to thank the U.S. State Department for its continued support of the Open Doors project. Please access the State Department resources noted on this slide to learn more about how you can celebrate the benefits of international education and exchange worldwide during International Education Week, and connect with Education USA and USA Study Abroad. We also want to thank our many partners on Open Doors, organizations that help us review and distribute the Open Doors surveys each year. We want to highlight our partners who worked with us on the Fall 2023 Snapshot Survey. And this project would not be possible without the 3,000 U.S. higher education institutions that receive our survey and take the time to respond each year. Thank you. Finally, we invite you to continue the conversation. For any press inquiries, please email press@iie.org. To join the conversation on social media, tag your post to ensure that Open Doors remains part of the discussion. We want to thank you for listening today and wish you a pleasant day.